Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Eisenherz and today I have a quick and fun gameplay for you guys. This one is going to be a bit different. I won't be showing you the starting hands because in a regular game you also don't get to see your opponent's starting hands. And I will be doing a voiceover. Please leave some feedback down below. I'd love to know which style of gameplay videos you prefer. And as always, deck lists can be found in the description box. But now, let's get started. Alright, Jin starts us off by putting a gemstone into play and exiling a cyclonic rift. I play a snow-covered island and a mana crypt and ship my turn. Charlie plays a jeweled lotus, cracks it to cast Malcolm. He then plays a fury islet and Gitaxian probes me to see my hand. He draws a card from the Gitaxian probe and passes his turn. Kiko draws for turn. He plays an island, follows up with a mana crypt. Charlie reacts. He taps to cast a spell pierce. Kiko can't pay, so his mana crypt gets countered. He then follows up with a Ornithopter, a Mox Opal, and a Jeweled Lotus. He cracks the Lotus and taps the land to cast Arcum. He then passes his turn. Jin plays a City of Traders, taps it to cast an Arcane Signet, then taps out to cast Dauthi Voidwalker. He then passes his turn. I play a Snow-Covered Island and tap out to cast my commander, Urza, Lord High Artificer. I get a Construct and follow up with a Jeweled Lotus. Pass my turn, Charlie untaps and draws, plays an Arid Mesa and cracks it for a Volcanic. He taps out to cast Kediss. Then goes to combat, deals 2 damage to the whole table and makes 3 treasure tokens. He ships his turn to Kiko, who untaps, draws, plays an island, taps his island for a mana vault, taps the mana vault and his Mox Opal to cast a Rhystic Study. Charlie reacts by cracking 2 treasure tokens and countering the Rhystic Study with a counterspell. Counterspell resolves, Rhystic Study gets countered, and Kiko activates his Arcum, sacrificing the Ornithopter to put a Sentinel Flute into play. He taps it for X equaling 0 and puts an Hangerback Walker into his hand. He then ships his turn. Jin untaps, draws, floats 2 colorless mana from his City of Traders. He then plays an Underground Sea, sacrifices the City of Traders, and taps out to cast his commander, Kraum. He then passes the turn. I untap, draw for turn, play an island, and pass my turn. Charlie untaps, he draws, attacks with Malcolm, and makes 3 more treasure tokens. He then taps out and sacrifices all his treasure tokens to cast Nif Mizzet. He then passes. Kiko untaps and draws for turn. He plays an island, activates his Sentinel Flute for 0 and gets a Phyrexian Walker into his hand, which he immediately casts. Then activates Arcum, sacrificing the Phyrexian Walker. And he puts a Spine of Ishsa into play, targeting the Nif Mizzet. I react to the ETB by tapping 5 to cast a Weir of Invention, X equaling 2. Charlie draws a card from the Nif Mizzet and shoots 1 damage at the Dauthi. He then casts a Fierce Guardianship, which again triggers Nif Mizzet. He draws another card and shoots 1 more damage at Dauthi, and I react with a counterspell countering the Fierce Guardianship, which again triggers Nif Mizzet and lets Charlie draw a card, shooting 1 damage. And I put an Imposter Mech into play and have it enter as a copy of Nif Mizzet. Then the ETB of the Spine of Ishsa resolve and Nif Mizzet gets destroyed. Kiko then taps his mana to cast an Hangerback Walker with X equaling 2. This triggers Kraum and Jin draws a card. Kiko then passes his turn. Jin untaps and draws. He plays a land and passes. I untap. Draw for turn. And play a Flooded Strand. I also have a Nif-Mizzet trigger, which I use to shoot the Kediss. I then pass my turn. Charlie untaps and draws a card. He taps his Fury Islet to cast Mana Vault. He then taps his Volcanic Island and the Mana Vault to recast Kediss. He moves to combat, deals 2 damage to the whole table and makes 3 more treasure tokens. He cracks one of the treasure tokens to cast a Gamble, which triggers the Nif-Mizzet, but with a trigger on the stack, Jin flashes in a Notion Thief. I react to the Notion Thief by cracking my Flooded Strand, putting a Mystic Sanctuary into play, which allows me to put the counterspell back on top of my library from the graveyard. I then cast a Force of Negation targeting the Gamble, which triggers my Nif-Mizzet. I draw the counterspell and I shoot 1 damage at Arcum. I then pay 2 to cast the counterspell targeting the Notion Thief. This triggers Kraum, and Jin gets to draw a card. Jin casts a Fierce Guardianship. This again triggers my Nif-Mizzet, which allows me to draw a card. I shoot 1 damage at the Arcum. And the Fierce Guardianship counters my counterspell. I get to draw 1 more card and shoot the Kediss. And then the Notion Thief resolves, which allows Jin to draw a card. Charlie then passes his turn to Kiko, who untaps and draws, plays a Soul Ring, follows up with a Grim Monolith, and then taps out to recast Arcum. He then taps his Sentinel Flute to put a Shield Sphere into his hand and immediately cast it. He attacks Charlie for 2 and passes his turn. Jin untaps, draws for turn, and plays a Ancient Tube. He taps it to cast a Windfall. Unfortunately, at this point, there's no interaction left and Jin is able to draw 28 cards. He follows up with a Mana Crypt, a Mox Opal, and a Chromox, in which he imprints a Mystic Remora. He then taps his mana to cast a Soul Ring. He taps 1 to cast a Rite of Flame, which triggers the Nif-Mizzet. He then follows up with a Dockside Extortionist, making a ton of treasure tokens. He then casts a Dark Ritual, which again triggers Nif-Mizzet and lets Jin draw a card from Notion Thief. Jin then follows up with an Imperial Seal, which again lets him draw a card and then 2-drop a card on top of his library. He then casts a Jeweled Lotus, cracks it to cast his commander Tevesh. He activates Tevesh to sacrifice the Dockside Extortionist and draw 2 cards. He then casts an Underworld Breach. He then shows us the Brain Freeze, which is game ending. GG. Alright, for me this was a really dope game. Charlie threatened to win very early with his Nif-Mizzet, but fortunately he got stopped by Kiko's Toolbox ability and I was able to copy the Nif-Mizzet before he died. Jin timed his Notion Thief perfectly, and although I was able to interact with him, he top decked that Fierce Guardianship, which allowed him to protect his Notion Thief from my counterspell. The subsequent wheel was to be expected, but we were all out of answers and the Brazilian Breach Baron took the win. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, remember to like, share, comment and subscribe for more content in the future. If you want to play some games with us, hop over to my Discord server, and if you want to support my channel even more, please consider becoming a patron. You can find all the links in the description box. This is Eisenherz and auf Wiedersehen.